everyone, as you can see in the previous page, I will be introducing to you the life and works of Soren by Kierkegaard. So, Kierkegaard was born in Copenhagen, Denmark on May 5, 1830. He is the seventh and youngest child of Michael Pedersen. He spent most of the years of his life in Copenhagen. He sowed his wild oats as a university student before becoming a religious.
After past years, he suffered from melancholia. A lot of commentators depict Denmark's most eminent philosopher as a depressed thinker. This is not surprising since it is Kierkegaard himself who acknowledges that he continuously lived under the yoke. And he suffered of despair and heavy-mindedness. So, he writes about his melancholy as his intimate competency. He died on November 11, 1855, refusing to receive the sacrament from a pastor. By then, he fell in love with and became engaged to Regina Olsen, and by then, he broke off the relationship. More on Kierkegaard, an individual man highly gifted but terribly alone, struggling not with external forces but with himself and God. In 1830, Kierkegaard went to the University of Copenhagen, enrolling a theological course of study as his father wished, and he spent most of his time reading literature and philosophy. While in the university, he was confronted with the Hegelian system and reacted strongly against it. Having no place for the individual, it could not supply what is looking for. That is, quote, "The thing to understand myself, the thing is to and find the truth which is true for me, to find the idea for which I can live and die." He ceased to practice his religion and he embarked on a life of pleasure, revolting against both his father and God. In 1854 and 1855, Kierkegaard began his long contemplated attack on Christendom. He said a vigorous controversy ensued in the course of which Kierkegaard maintained that what he represented was a simply ordinary honesty. He said the emasculated Christianity of the established church should recognize and admit that it was not a Christianity. And Kierkegaard died in that evening of November 11, 1855, finally obtaining the peace for which he had so deeply longed. In 1840-1843, shortly after passing theological examination, Kierkegaard was engaged to Regina Olsen. Yet, as time went by, he increasingly believed that he had to end the relationship. He felt that he had to give up Regine because he believed at that time that he had to choose between Regine and God. The thing is not to have many thoughts, but to hold fast to one thought, and he chosen God. So he made a mistake, a false step in proposing her. Later, he decided that he made a mistake in giving up Regine, that he had more faith in God, really believing that with God all things are possible. He could have had her too. In 1843, it was Kierkegaard's response to Hegel's ideas of both and synthesis which reconcile conflicting ideas. For Kierkegaard, living involves making choices between mutually exclusive alternatives, the most important of which the choice of how ultimately justify one life and determines the entire course and meaning of one's life. According to Kierkegaard, I see it all perfectly. There are two possible situations. One can either do this or that. My honest opinion and my friendly advice is this: do it or do not do it. You will regret it both.
Aesthetic man is governed by sense. Impulse and emotion, the essential features of the aesthetic interest, are the absence of fixed universal moral standards and innate religious faith, and the presence of a desire to enjoy the whole range of emotive and sense experience. The aesthetic man, his existence seems to be the expression of freedom, and the aesthetic consciousness or attitude to life may be accompanied by vague awareness, by vague disgusted gratification with dispersal of the self in the pursuit and pleasure and sense enjoyment. The second stage is the ethical. A man accepts determinate moral standards and obligation, the voice of universal reason, and thus gives form and consistency to his life. Now, the ethical stage has its own heroism. The tragic hero renounces himself in order to express the universal. At the same time, the ethical man may take account of human weakness. To affirm one's relationship to God, the personal and transcendent absolute is to affirm oneself in spirit, by relating itself to its own self by willing to be itself. As Kierkegaard dialect is one discontinuity in the sense of the transition from one stage to another. It's made by choice, by self-commitment, and not through a continuous process of conceptual meditation. God is transcendent absolute. He is not object, the existence of which can be proved. True God reveals himself to human conscience, in the sense that the man can become aware of his alienation and his need of God.
Hegelianism. Hegelianism is the philosophy of G.W.F. Hegel, which can be summed up by the dictum that the rational alone is real, which means that all reality is capable of being expressed in rational categories. His goal was to reduce reality into more synthetic unity within the system of absolute idealism. In the Hegelianism system, the qualitative distinction between God and man is parenthetically abolished. The system does not indeed hold out the attractive prospect of an illusory land, but the marriage is destructive of faith, and its claim to represent Christian is bogus. In other words, Kierkegaard refuses to admit that in this life there can be a higher standpoint than that of faith. In his view, the fact that man is held eternally accountable for belief or disbeliefs shows that belief is not a matter of accepting the conclusion of demonstrative argument, but rather a matter of will. Catholic theologians would obviously wish to make some distinction here, but Kierkegaard was not a Catholic theologian, and the point is that he deliberately was not a Catholic theologian, and he deliberately emphasized the nature of faith into a leap. This comes out clearly in his famous interpretation of truth as a subjectivity. The truth is precisely the venture which chooses an objective uncertainty, which the passion of the infinite. I contemplate the order of nature in the hope of finding God, and I seek omnipotence and wisdom, but I also see much more else that disturbs my mind and excites my anxiety. The sum of all this is an objective uncertainty. Obviously, truth as so described is precisely what Kierkegaard means by faith. The definition of truth as subjectively and the definition of faith are the same. Without risk, there is no faith. Faith is precisely the contradiction between infinite passion of the individual's inwardness and the objective uncertainty. Religious truth exists only when the passionate appropriation of the objective uncertain. In point of Kierkegaard does not say that there are no rational motives that all making the act of fate, and that is a purely arbitrary act of capricious choice. He commits himself and so gives form and direction to his life. He exists towards an end for which he actively strives by choosing this and rejecting that. If understood simply in this way, the term existence is neutral in the sense that it can be applied within the stages of dialectic. It can hardly be claimed that Kierkegaard's definition or description of existence are always crystal clear. At the same time, the general notion is intelligible enough. It is clear that for him, the existing individual excellence, par excellence, is the individual before God, the man who sustains the standpoint of faith. In the writings of the essentialist, the concept of dread is capacious, but the term is used by different writers in different ways. However, one can think broader than range of application and say that dread is a state which precedes qualitative leap from a stage of life's way to another.
Good day, everyone. I am Erica Joy Gabato, and I'm here to discuss about the life of Soren Kierkegaard and his philosophy. So Soren Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher, theologian, poet, social critic, and religious author who is widely considered to be the first existentialist philosopher. He was born on May 5, 1813 at Copenhagen, Denmark, and died on November 11 at the age of 42 at Copenhagen, Denmark. Soren Kierkegaard was a profound and prolific writer in the Danish Golden Age of intellectual artistic activity. His work crosses the boundaries of philosophy, theology, psychology, literary criticism, devotional literature, and fiction. So this is Soren Kierkegaard. Next, Soren Kierkegaard was the seventh and last child of Michael Pedersen Kierkegaard, a wealthy businessman, and Anne Sorensdatterland, the household maid whom he first impregnated and then married within a year of his first wife's death. So, ang pagkahigpit na kabangalan ng kanyang ama, deep melancholy, and profound sense of guilt greatly influenced Soren's life and writings. These are the example of Soren Kierkegaard's works. Number 1. Either or, which is on 1843. Number 2. The Concept of Anxiety on 1844. Number 3. Concluding a Scientific Postscript on 1846. And many more to mention. What was Soren Kierkegaard's philosophy di ay? In addition to being dubbed the father of existentialism, Kierkegaard is also the best known as a trenchant critic of Hegel and Hegelianism, and for his invention or elaboration of a host of philosophical, psychological, literary, and theological categories, including anxiety, which is pagkabalisa, despair, kawalan ng pag-asa, melancholy, pagkalungkot, reputation, pag-uulit, inwardness, panloob, and irony, which is kabalintunaan. Next is is freedom according to Soren Kierkegaard? According to Kierkegaard, freedom is an expression for self-activation, and self-activation is an essential feature of the self. It means, usa ka potensyal alang sa pagpadayag sa atong kaugalingon. The self is free to choose his own way, and self-disclosing is voluntaristic and not rationalistic. It means, ang sarili ay malayang pumili ng kanyang sariling pamamaraan at ang pagsisiwalat ng sarili ay kusang loob at hindi makatwiran. Sin is the main factor of self-change. Agree? And the question is, did Kierkegaard believe in free will? The answer is, Kierkegaard thought that our freedom is itself a big nothing. Inilarawan niya ito bilang isang humihikab na bangin sa puso ng pagkakaroon ng tao na dapat mapunan ng mga desisyon at kilos. Nagets ra? Number 2. Does Soren Kierkegaard believe in God? Kierkegaard believed that Christianity was not a doctrine to be taught, but rather a life to be lived. So, sinasaalang niya na maraming mga Kristiyano na ganap na umaasa sa panlabas na mga patunay ng Diyos ay nawawala ng isang tunay na karanasan sa Kristiyano, which is precisely the relationship one individual can have with God. Last question. Is Soren Kierkegaard important? Yes. Why? Because his philosophy also influenced the development of existential psychology. And before I end my report, I have a quote for you guys, sir, from Soren Kierkegaard, that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Thank you for listening. Once again, I am Erica J. Gabato. Bye!
Thank you for watching.